Episode 186 Above Ground Podcast, Dance the Night Away with Jean Trewhella.
Disclaimer. The hosts of this podcast, Will Foley and TPP, are not medical professionals, and this is not medical advice. Both Will and TPP have firsthand experience with mental illness. They have their own perspective and own thoughts on mental health challenges. Above Ground Podcast was birthed to help those who struggle with their mental health through honest dialogue. By speaking openly and sharing tools, they foster connection. By fostering connection, they convey hope. With connection and hope, we can continue to increase awareness. These conversations aim to break down the walls while building stronger foundations for positive mental health. This is Above Ground Podcast.
Coming at you live with real conversations about mental health from the perspective. It's time for Above Ground Podcast. Now your hosts, TPP and Will Foley. Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to Above Ground Podcast. Above Ground Podcast, because you can't serve below. Welcome to 2023. Happy New Year. 2022 is out of here, and we are raging right into it nonstop. Here we go. This week's episode is a 518-based person, Jean Trewhella, who runs Movement Insights in Malta, New York. We're going to get to her conversation about why she started her dance therapy movement in a few moments. But first, I wanted to talk to you about one of our favorite new places, and this has become my favorite new place, and that's the Sages Circle in Glenville, New York. This coming Sunday, January 8th at 1 p.m., we are hosting Above Ground Podcast, and Sages Circle is hosting a mental health meetup group at 1 p.m. Tim and I will be there to facilitate. Come on in, and we're going to talk about mental health. It'll be a general mental health group. We can talk about whatever everybody wants to talk about, whatever the group comes up with. We'll do a little meditation. And we'll talk about skills, we'll talk about language, we'll talk about emotions, we'll talk about all kinds of stuff. So join us at 1 p.m. at the Sages Circle for that mental health meetup group. And also Sunday, February 12th, 2023 at 6 p.m., TPP is doing a discussion and book signing at the Sages Circle for his new book, Never Underestimate the Power of You. As you can see, 2023 seems to be shaping up to be a year of Above Ground Podcast doing stuff at the Sages Circle, so we'll see how that works out. But they're very awesome. It's such an amazing place, man. It is the premier metaphysical boutique in the capital region, and it is very cool. So go check it out, 443 Saratoga Road, Glenville, New York. Give them a shout out. Give them a call if you need to at 518-369-7018. And that's thesagescircle.com. All right, right now, episode 186 Above Ground Podcast. Jean Trewhella, Dance the Night Away. Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to Above Ground Podcast.
Above Ground Podcast, because you can't serve below.
Hey, what is up, everyone? You know who that is. You down with TPP?
Yeah, you know me.
What up, Timmy? How's it going this fine Sunday fall morning, my friend? How are you?
It's chipper, rather chipper.
Rather chipper. That's not something that you usually say. This morning we are joined by Jean Trewhella, who is the founder of Movement Insights, located here in Nippertown in Malta, New York. Movement Insights is an eclectic movement and art studio where she uses her training as a journey dance facilitator to energize and inspire others. Jean draws from her vast experience as a corporate exec, her spiritual training, her recovery, community service work, and her lifelong study of intuitive movement. Jean, it is so good to have you here with us this morning. How are you doing?
Hi, Will. I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me here. It's a cool morning, but I'm excited to talk about movement.
Awesome. So I wanted to just jump right in. Let's start with, what is journey dance, and why is dance and movement such an integral part of healing in our healing journey?
So journey dance is one of many forms of conscious movement. You basically turn inwards and listen to your own body, and the movement starts from within. We let go of our minds, right? We are humans that have minds, bodies, and spirits, and we shut down our bodies often. And so Journey Dance is an hour and a half movement practice where we let the body actually lead and we see what happens. We journey through our emotions and our feelings, bringing joy and connection with others.
It almost sounds as if it's almost a Reiki-like or like somatic experience in a way, because we do, as we know, that our bodies do hold trauma. We hold trauma in our bodies and we hold all kinds of energy in our bodies. So I could see where movement and conscious movement would help. But can you explain to people what conscious movement is, sort of? I mean, I know it sort of sounds esoteric and woo-woo, but
Yes,
what
woo-woo.
is conscious
Actually,
movement?
it does sound esoteric and woo-woo, and actually it really isn't, or it can be, but it doesn't have to be. In the history, we've always danced. Back 8,000 years ago, they have, we found wall printings, cave printings that show people dancing. And people danced in order to connect with each other. When you move in rhythm with another person, your bodies kind of align and you attune to them emotionally and you feel connected. And in today's world, we've let go of a lot of that connection. So what conscious movement does in all the different forms is it gives us a way to, again, connect with other people. It started really with Mary Stark's Winehouse with authentic movement and moved into 5 rhythms. Now I'm practicing Journey Dance. They're all different ways for you to really listen to yourself. Like I said, we basically listen to your own heartbeat. If you get still and you listen internally, then you can imagine somewhere that you want to go and you just start moving in that direction. There's no rules. There's no steps that you need to follow. Almost all of the practices start with an embodiment series where you really connect to the ground. The music is really kind of like a drum beat or a Native American flute song, something that's really calming and like I said, grounding. People talk about the chakras also. It's a connection to earth. And then it moves into, for Journey Dance, a wonderful thing that we call funky connection, where we basically start playing kind of fun music that you find at a dance club. And we, connect eye to eye with people and smile at each other and say, "You're amazing." And you say, "Thank you very much." One of the things also that we don't do in this culture very often is accept when somebody says something nice about us. We tend to go, "Oh, no, I'm not that." Well, in Journey Dance, we practice with our bodies and our faces, and we actually accept those positive emotions from each other. And it's that giving and receiving of that positive reinforcement that just is a lot of fun. And so we get the energy going with that kind of fun. And then we move into a part of the dance that is usually evocative emotion, where now you've got your energy flowing, you're moving around, you're feeling comfortable with the people in the room, and you can now start to go inward and think about what is it that is happening in your life today. Are you having a loss? Are you beating yourself up? Are you going down rabbit holes? What is it that isn't serving you anymore? And we usually thank that thing. We name it in our, with our dance. We dance with it and we thank it and we release it. We say, "You helped me. You did what you needed to do for me." The things that the barriers and the walls we put up actually were there for a purpose. They kept us safe, usually when we experienced some trauma in the past. But now they're not helping us. They're not serving us anymore. So in the dance, we let go of those things and we, again, release them. Once you've released something, you have some space open and you ask for something new to come into your life. What do you want to create out of this trauma? And we usually will then dance with scarves, where we bring in a wonderful beauty into the world and you start to just enjoy something in your life. And again, we're doing this all with people. So you're in your own experience, but you're also with everyone else doing this experience together. And it's that togetherness that I think also really makes the spark. We end the dance with a prayer dance and a heart dance. So it's not religious, but it is spiritual, at least particularly where I'm doing it. I am connecting to spirit. So like I said, we're whole beings. We have mind, body, and soul. And this allows us to connect and to listen to our inner wisdom. So hopefully that sounded a little less woo-woo.
Yes,
A little more approachable.
It actually has a lot more to do with the connection side than I had originally thought, because you think, movement, dance, you're thinking more movement, and which is still great because, as we know, exercise reduces cortisol and so on and so forth, get rid of the anxiety by movement. So I was kind of on the movement side, but it has a lot to do with the connection. And, you mentioned the Native American flute, and in my head, when you're telling me about the connection with the dancer, and that's the first thing I thought of was Native Americans. They have the big drums going, and they're chanting, and they're just kind of almost sounds like it's unconscious movement, but or it's conscious movement, but it leads to unconscious movement. Like letting go, I mean, make a conscious effort to movement and think about what you're going to do, almost like setting an intention and then letting go and just movement and do your thing.
Yes.
Obviously deeply connected to our tribal history. I would assume like this kind of developed out of our search for things that worked for people for many, many, many years that we've lost in our culture. And you come to this from your lifelong involvement in movement, but you also come to this as a survivor also. And we spoke very briefly about your loss and what that loss entailed for you. Can we get into that a little bit while we have some time before you have to go?
Absolutely. So I've been dancing my whole life, but that's because I had some early childhood trauma and some struggles with mental health. I went down, I mentioned the rabbit holes and the self-berating. So that it's always been a help for me personally in my journey. I'm a mother of two, and unfortunately, one of my children chose to end their life 5 years ago. And that, I think, really deepened my understanding of how powerful this kind of work can be. Ty was 21 years old. They were an amazing artist, and you may hear the pronoun they. They were non-binary. So if you can imagine 10 years ago now, or 12 years ago now, being a mother of a 12-year-old and hearing that your daughter is not a daughter, but is a they, them, and trying to understand what that meant, and imagine yourself there, and also with that child struggling with self-harm and suicidal attempts. And it was a hard thing to be a mother to that child. Ty was an amazing soul, as I said, but they struggled. And I was fortunate enough to have the means to help them with a lot of outside help. I was fortunate enough to be aware and awake enough to hear what non-binary meant and to still, accept and love my child. And it wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. And I don't want to blame society or anything else, but they were taken from this world 5 years ago on November 9th. And I was in Journey Dance teacher training at the time. I was in like the fourth day, the evening of the last day that we were there. And so I was connected with all of these wonderful people, and we've been dancing and sharing and feeling emotions. And I got that horrible call, and I was surrounded by the love and the connection that had, been brought out of these 25 women, men and women who had been with me. I just kept dancing. I knew that Ty had left this world when I was in a good, safe space. And I actually used dance as a real therapy. I went to my doctor and I said, I need to keep dancing. Will you write me a prescription? And
That's a very good
I,
doctor that they were willing to do that, because a lot of doctors won't. I mean, nowadays doctors don't write you anything, and especially when you request it.
yeah, but I talked to him and I kept saying, I did take a little bit of time off of work. So I was able to dance twice a week. And I danced the Journey dance on Tuesdays, and which is a more led dance, the way I kind of described it. And you have someone who's facilitating it. And then on Thursdays, I did an ecstatic dance, which is music only, where you just listen to the music and go completely internally to whatever movement happens. And that allowed me to more deeply process the trauma of losing my child. And I did that every week. And then when I went back to work, I just said, I need this. I'm fortunate enough that my work would have let me go anyway, but I wouldn't have let myself. I know myself well enough that I needed to have the official prescription that I had to do this. But I love it now. And I'm glad that I had that prescription and it kept me dancing. And now 5 years later, I'm, trying to offer this to the rest of the community.
So you had your business, your movement, you had that in place already before this tragic event.
No, I didn't actually.
Oh,
I
okay.
I was taking the training for my own personal how to deal with being a mother of a child who was struggling with mental illness, and I was doing it for myself just to continue my journey of learning about movement. It wasn't until the pandemic when there wasn't a place to move. Everything shut down. Everything shut down and things went online and it was kind of okay, but I needed a place to keep moving. And so I found a little place in Malta Commons. The rent was cheap and I built a dance floor and I just decided I'm going to be the spark in this community to bring this healing to others. And that's what I'm doing. It's still a part-time thing for me. I'm still a full-time engineer, manager, executive, and I do this out of passion, out of love.
How did your faith help you get through this? Because I know a lot of people, myself included, would start to question all of that based on your loss and say, why me? Or I don't trust, why did God do this, or whatever your view is. And
Yeah.
knowing your background a little bit from our conversations through the email, obviously being where you are right now is very important to you. How did that help you through? Did you lose faith at any time? Or was that the bedrock that kind of allowed you to heal?
Yeah, and I don't know, your listeners can't see the smile creeping on my face because one of the women in the Journey dance training who was with me when I got the phone call is an Episcopal priest. And I'm an Episcopalian. I chose it. I wasn't raised it, but I chose it. Like I said, I really feel like Ty and God got together and said, how do we have Ty leave this planet, this earth, and keep Jean as supported as she possibly can be? And so this Episcopal priest had her arms around me, and within minutes of hearing, I was able to say to her, did I do this? Did God do this to me? How do I? And I was able to talk through with her a lot of those common questions. And she, was able to resolve me of the guilt, like in that instant, which not that, guilt comes back again, of course. But so my faith, I've stayed faithful. I am an Episcopalian. Episcopalians believe that you should question and you should always be challenging and thinking through things. And so I actually, my faith is very broad. I believe that God speaks to us, and I use the word God. I also use the word higher power. So if your listeners are, are upset by the word God, I'm sorry. It's an
I use
easy
the word
term.
unit. I use the word unity.
Unity.
I
Yeah,
choose
and that
unity
unity
myself
works too.
because the other word I just don't like, but that's my own personal
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly. So higher power,
Right,
whatever,
exactly.
unity.
Yep.
I really believe that unity speaks to us the way that we can hear. And unity speaks to us through other people's. And so some people hear God through religion. Some people hear God through connecting with nature. Some people hear unity through other people. And, I hear I hear higher power speaking to me through other people often. And I feel spirit speaking to me through movement too. So I stayed very connected, but my connection is a very broad and inclusive view of what spirit and God is.
Wow, thank you for that description too, because that it does go to show that we can have certain views and then pull in everything else because it's not just one thing that necessarily gets us through. Because I think if we only have one thing is when we start to feel a little bit unconnected. Could you sort of
Yeah,
agree? Do you think you
I
need
completely agree.
multiple?
I don't know if you need to have multiple things, but I do know that inclusivity. I mean, as we've been learning a lot, diversity, equity, and inclusion. You have to be awake and aware, and tolerant of others, and curious. Being curious of others. I think we get in trouble when we think we're right and other people are wrong. I think it's we get, if you could stay curious, it's an easier path through this life. That's actually what I'll say. It's an easier path. Um,
Curiosity is an easier path because it actually creates connection. Because if you're curious about
exactly.
someone, you can actually just start the connection, and it's interesting to hear different things and find out about different things. But I think a lot of people are stuck in fear too much that they're so afraid to they're so afraid sometimes to put themselves out there because of their biases or their own anxieties themselves and whatnot. Where
Yeah, yeah.
dance
And actually,
where I could see a dance class or a movement thing, a movement exercise, or what you're doing could very much help someone get out of that cycle of being alone and connect to other people.
right. Thank you for doing this earlier than I know you normally do, but it's really helpful to me. And
Yeah,
and
it's only a half hour. It's all good, and I can tell just by the look on your face how you talk about this and how you are relaying all this to us and sharing this with our listeners that this is super important to you and what it provides you. I can tell because I can see the glow on you through the screen. I know a lot of people don't like Zoom, but you can really connect through a screen if you're present enough to do it. So thank you very much.
You had mentioned in an email or something about how sharing our experiences and our tools, and in order to connect with others, in return it can help heal others. And I think that's going back to what you said about how you started your own movement place, is that's exactly what Will and I, why we did this. We just said, let's do it. Let's just start our own, because you know what I mean? It's like we could sit in our houses and say, oh, well, geez, point the finger and complain, and they need to do this, or someone needs to speak up. And so, or you can just, you know what? Let's be that voice. Let's be, as you said, let's be that spark in the community, because that's all we can be,
yes,
is a spark. And I think everyone around us, if they are willing and curious to come, is they have that spark as well. So when we connect the sparks, that ignites.
yes, yes. And really, it's that positive feeling is contagious, and negative feelings are contagious too. But they balance each other out, so that if you can bring more positive sparks, more connection, and listening to one another, it builds on each other. And you just are living, I want my community to be an open and a viable, I don't know, excited, but vibrant community. And for me, part of that is movement. I mean, we just we sit and we stare at computers too much of the time. Screens have taken over, and we need to get blood flowing. We need to see each other face to face and really look in each other's eyes. And it's a little bit scary, but the nice thing about conscious movement and journey dance is that it meets the dancer where they are. There, you can't get it wrong. There's not a step that you have to do. Wherever you are, even if all you can do is move your, sort of rock back and forth.
It
That can be
sounds
your
very it sounds
whole.
very person centered. It sounds like
It is.
it was developed by someone who had some of the Carl Rogers person centered training at some
Yeah.
point, because it does really like,
Yeah,
promote.
it's about you. Promote it. You're, as a facilitator, it's my job to help people feel comfortable and move from wherever they are in their journey. And that's just a beautiful thing to witness and to promote. So thank you for letting me come and talk about this today.
Absolutely.
The common theme with the connection, I just wanted to kind of throw in there that, Will and I both on kind of different avenues. We were part of a vibrant music scene here in the capital region in like the 90s, mid 90s. And I, looking back, when you're in it, you don't realize it. Plus you're younger and you don't, you don't think about these things, but looking back on it now, it was one of the most treasured times in my life. And I think because of the connection, we had all sorts of walks of life and everyone got along. Everyone looked out for each other. No one cared what color you were, what clothes you wore, nothing. It was everybody just was there for one purpose. And I think we thought that purpose was the music, but I think it was the connection.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And one of the things in my my work with recovery is that they say, connection is the opposite of addiction. That's one of my favorite phrases. And
I've
it's
never heard that
really
before.
true.
That's great.
Oh
That is
yeah,
a
connection is the opposite of addiction. And because we
wow.
get isolated, and once you can find that connection and fill that spirit shaped hole, you're filling it with people and connection. And just to go along that theme, I looked at in COVID, I looked at Malta Commons, which is this old shopping center area with all of these brick paveways, and I thought, this is a place where we could have an artist community, we could have a healing community. And so that's my vision, is that Malta Commons actually brings in a ton of different artists and healers. There's a yoga studio, Yana Yoga's there. Greater Life Grief Counseling is there. Hannah's Healing and Wellness is there.
Where is
And
you in Malta?
Malta Commons.
Is that is there a library or like community center? Is that
No,
this?
it's not by the community center. It's right off of exit 12. So when you get off exit 12 and turn towards Malta, there's a Panera, and you go towards Panera, there's a bunch of little shops. And
Okay. The hotel, there's like a motel and stuff
there's a
back there, right?
hotel. Yep, a hotel right there. And you can
Okay.
walk through those shops, and we have, like I said, just a burgeoning little community
I have to
of
get over there.
healers.
That's in my backyard. So
It's
I didn't realize this
Yeah,
stuff was there. It was like a wellness and a grief thing. And I mean, it's like, yeah, it's right up our
yeah,
alley. So
it's
we
it's
need,
really it's really awesome. And I mean, there's a lot of open space there. It's really low rent, and that's where artists congregate, right? Is in the low rent areas, and we turn them around.
Very
So
nice.
yeah, and this spring I'm going to get together with the in community the the Greater Life Grief Counseling and Hannah's Healing, and I'm hoping Yana Yoga will do it with us as well. And we're going to have a workshop in the spring on grief recovery, and
Well,
I'll bring
speaking of
movement to
that,
it. They'll bring other aspects.
Speaking of that, I did not mean to cut you off, but I really wanted, because I'm looking at the clock. You have on next Saturday, even though this won't come out for a while, but you do have a grief workshop coming up next Saturday, and I saw it on your website, and unfortunately next Saturday I have like 5 things going on, so I cannot get there for this one. Is this something that you do on a regular basis?
Yes,
Or is this
I
the
will.
first one?
This is the very first one. It's I'm inviting. It's called Loss, Love, and Renewal. We're going to do both the journey dance, grief recovery, like a grief journey, and we're also going to add an art component to it. Julianne is going to do kintsu, which is a Japanese art where you break apart something, and we'll tear apart beautiful hearts, and then you glue them back together with gold after it's broken, because we're all broken, and we are all that much more beautiful and unique because we're put back together in a beautiful way, and so
I
that healing is wonderful.
I
So
love that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It has been amazing to have you on this morning, and I so appreciate your time. And I'm going to come to one of your movement insight classes, because as soon as I read your brochure, I said this is something I need right now currently, because I have a lot of stuff going on in my personal life that I could really use to some releases
yeah,
for. Timmy, it's all on you, my friend.
Do you have a favorite or a least favorite word?
I would say my favorite word is love, and it's probably a pretty common one for people to choose as their favorite, but I really believe we spreading love is one of the things that allows us to connect, and it allows us to heal. I'm
Do you
not
have
sure I
a
can think of a least favorite one. Let me think of a least favorite one. I mean, kind of the opposite, which is hate. I mean, I really don't like the word hate, actually. That's a good one, because it breaks us apart from other people, and it's very fixed. Love is open and inviting, and hate is just isolating. And so I'd say that's my least favorite word.
What is something about grief that you didn't recognize until your very personal loss?
I did not recognize that grief actually lasts a lifetime. I did not recognize that. I thought grief was something that I did, and I could get over. But I actually heard recently, the I was asked, or was heard that someone was asked about, when do I get over the the grief of my loved one's death, and they said, how long will they be dead? It's a simple way of looking at it, but it's true. Grief, and it doesn't mean you can't heal and change and actually create beautiful things out of grief, but but the grief is there, and that's acceptance. Acceptance is the
Except that
answer. You got it.
that's what I was going to say is acceptance, because even asking that question is just creating more weight on top of that. And like you said, you can't change it, but what you can do is change your relationship to it. And
Yep.
I think that grief is a sign that there was love. Jean's insights, again, we're just very thankful that our paths have crossed, and we got to do this because again, sharing tools, sharing stories, these are all guidelines and hands to hold for others when they fall upon these tragic and dark times.
Yep. So thanks again for having me on here. It's really a pleasure to take this next step in my journey.
It's all about taking steps, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Getting curious.
Movement. It's all about steps.
There you go.
It's all about steps.
It's all about steps.
We've come full circle.
Yes.
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 Yes. It's all about steps, and steps create the connection. And we're here, and we did it. And again, thank you. And I hope that we can, connect in the future with your movement classes and the grief
Yeah.
and all these other places, because we're trying to do the same thing and just basically help people and let them know that there are tools and things out here we can do to decrease the suffering and just
Yeah.
make life a little bit more bearable.
Yeah. So if people want to join me on my Tuesday, Thursday journeys, I do noon journey dance. I'm at my studio Suite 10, noon Tuesdays, and then Thursday night at 7 p.m. I do ecstatic dance, and then Saturday morning at 9:30 I have a journey dance flow that I'll do. So those are my weekly offerings, and then I have workshops, and just check my website for those movement-insights com. Thanks for
And I
letting me
think
get my commercial in there.
No,
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But we have one last question for you.
Will's going to put
okay.
the tags for that stuff.
Oh, yeah, I'll include everything in my show notes for that.
Thank you
Don't
so
worry.
much.
Oh,
So-
yeah, absolutely.
If there was one thing that you could do or that you would like to see done for mental health as a whole without any kind of restraint, what would it be?
Research on the cures for mental health in the brain, just what's happening in the brain, the neurological science, because there's a lot of curative things that can happen now that we understand the reactions that happen with the brain. And I just put the kind of funding into the understanding of the brain. I really think we could avoid a lot of the tragedies that we see in this world around mental health. So that's the one thing I would love to see.
Thank you very much for sharing that. That was amazing. Thank you, Jean, very much for being here. It has been a pleasure to connect with you. You will see me at one of your upcoming classes for sure, because I could really use that right now. And I'm not embarrassed to say it, but I will pop on a Hootie and the Blowfish song and dance around my kitchen once in a while, just because I need to sometimes. I have those secret pop songs that make me smile like a 12-year-old sometimes.
That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Letting yourself feel.
Yes, and feeling is very hard. Sometimes.
Yep, you got to feel it to heal it, though.
That's right. You
You
got to feel it to heal it, and name it to tame it. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. Everyone, don't forget, please go to movementinsights.com and check out her offerings. Check out Jean's offerings. Her story is amazing. We thank her so much for being here. Timmy, another cool connection, another good way to provide hope and connection, because that's what this is all about, man. So it's been awesome. I hope you have a wonderful day. And
thank you. I hope you do too.
Absolutely. And until next time, get well.
Be safe.
Stay above.
Thank you for giving us a listen. New episodes every Wednesday. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can share, rate, review, and even subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Other ways to support the show: follow us on social media, share the content, share our episodes. You can also buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/abovegroundpod. For further concerns, show ideas, or just to say hi, you can email us at abovegroundpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, thank you for listening and supporting mental health. Keep the conversation going and stay above.